How's it going, guys? Today I'm going to be talking about War for the Planet of the Apes, the third and final installment in the Planet of the Apes series, directed by Matt Reeves. And it takes place right after the events of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Even though Caesar was able to kind of break off the fight and kind of make a stand that apes will not kill human beings because they're trying to remain peaceful, some human beings were like, you know what, no, this is an act of terror. We need to wipe out these apes or they're going to continue to be doing whatever they're doing and eventually wipe out our own race. And this is where we're introduced to the main villain of this film, the Colonel, played by Woody Harrelson, who is just going after Caesar and trying to eliminate all these apes and bring the human dominance back to the world, because after this plague that has been spread ever since the first film, known as the simian flu, slowly human beings have been dying off left and right, and apes are getting stronger, they're getting smarter. Woody Harrelson's character, the Colonel, sees all of this, and he is afraid for what is going to be happening with these human beings 20, 30 years from now. Are there any going to be even left? So I was really excited going to the series because I really enjoyed Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I thought it was a really great film. It had a lot of great action, some good characters, and just a very well-made, beautiful-looking film. With this film, we kind of capture a lot of the same stuff. I think the special effects are still really amazingly captured here. The motion capture stuff is all done really well. The special effects are really amazing. I think they actually upped up the game for special effects. There's a real big close-up shot of Maurice, really close. Like, usually movies try not to do that because they can't get away with it. This film attempted to do it, and it freaking works, because I was looking at a real ape. It seemed like really close up, and you just see like all the hair on his face and on the fur, and it looks so freaking authentic that you're just completely blown away by what technology they have now, to the point where you cannot distinguish the fact that you're looking at effects, but you know, it looks like real apes. In terms of story, I think for a finale kind of movie, like, you know, Return of the King, Return of the Jedi, I was expecting a little bit more. There were times in this, I feel like for a finale movie, it felt a bit slow. It was unraveling things. The movie is about 2 hours long, and it was just taking its time, not really going anywhere. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes was a very exciting and, you know, intense movie. This film decided to relax a little bit and make it a much more slower paced film, maybe because it was supposed to be more effective, maybe like Logan, for instance, but I was expecting a little bit more action, hence the name War for the Planet of the Apes. I felt that the war aspect of the films was captured better in Dawn for the Planet of the Apes, between the war, the final third act, where we see that the fight between the humans, the apes, and then the apes between apes. This film, I felt like, yes, it's a war film. We have the Colonel's soldiers, they're going up against the apes, but I feel like that it wasn't enough, because the entire film I was thinking, okay, we're looking at an army, you know, these troops are taking on these apes. Where are all the other human beings at? Have they been wiped out? Are we just looking, is it just this army that's left? It just really, the movie felt like it was so small. It didn't feel like the whole world was at stake, that it was going to be this war between humans and apes. It was more like this war between apes and this army. And it felt very clustered and just small. It didn't feel like this huge, big blockbuster that I thought it was going to be. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, it kind of, you feel that, but you see, you know, apart from just the soldiers, because there's not really, it's just people holding guns. There's never really like a whole army or anything, but you see civilians, you see normal everyday people, women, children, and in this film you don't see it. It's like they've been all wiped out. And I feel like they could have either explained that better or actually showed it, given us something. Especially since this movie does tend to explain certain elements to what happened to the human race, or why they just keep dying, even though they kind of explained it in the previous films. Like, we don't need to be explained all this information that they're doing. I thought Woody Harrelson was a good villain. I think, even when they cast him, I thought that was a really good choice. Woody Harrelson, if he's given the right kind of dialogue, I think he could give a performance and give us a very intimidating kind of villain that I've always wanted to see in this franchise. But Fortunately, he's not given a whole lot to do. He has a decent amount of on-screen time, but he is not as fierce as the trailers make it out to be. I was expecting him to be a lot more brutal, especially when it ends up happening with his character. I was expecting something more out of that. The humans weren't even the main focus of the film. It was more about the apes. And usually that is the most interesting thing about these films, is the apes. The human beings have never really been interesting, even though I think Dawn of the Planet of the Apes had some interesting characters. And I think that's what was lacking in this film, is that we didn't get enough characters to like other than the apes. And the fact that this movie was slow, there wasn't a whole lot of dialogue, there was a lot of really slow moments. And while the slower moments were nice, they were nice, I felt for a finale, a movie that's going to wrap up an entire franchise, it just didn't have that much of a great impact, and that people are going to remember as the final film of this humongous franchise. I just don't think it is. I think the trilogy, it's a solid trilogy. I think it told the story really well through 3 films. I still like the original series a lot better, but if you think about it, these last 3 films were really the last 2 films of the original series. So, is it fair to really compare the 2 series? Maybe not. But what I thought was funny was that they tried to sort of connect the original series to this new retelling of the story. There's certain little Easter eggs that are thrown into the movie from the original series, and it's like, why is that really in there? I mean, it has nothing to do with anything. They're just throwing it in for fan service, kind of like the Coca-Cola truck that we see in the forest as just product placement. So when we got the action scenes, they work really well. Unfortunately, we only get that, like, the actual war 20 minutes before the ending. It's like, it's very similar to Rise for the Planet of the Apes. They're building up this story, and then we get this big action scene the last 20 minutes in the movie. That is War for the Planet of the Apes. We were expecting a war. We weren't really getting it. Apart from soldiers just walking through a forest, we didn't really capture the war that I wanted to see in this film. This film took some risks. There's a comedic character in this film, Bad Monkey, who tries to add some comic relief because it's a very serious film, and it works. So there are some things in this film that they take risks. It's not like I'm saying, oh, it's a conservative film, it's just trying to wrap up the movie and be done with this series. But it just was a little bit slow. For people who are not huge Planet of the Apes fans, they're going to be maybe bored with this film. And that is my biggest issue with this film, that it's not going to be for everybody. For a finale film, there could have been a lot more action. It's an action science fiction film. That is what science fiction nowadays is. It's a bunch of action and adventure, maybe some horror. It's not the old-fashioned science fiction, philosophical kind of movies anymore. The third act is very solid. It's just everything leading up to it is a bit slow. They dialed it down a notch, and that's not something I was expecting, because the title clearly is saying something different. I think the story was well told. It wraps up the trilogy pretty well. The third act is pretty solid, but unfortunately there are some issues with pacing and the villain that I had that kind of eventually brought this movie down. And the trailer shows a lot of the action scenes, and pretty much all the action scenes you see in the trailer is all the things you get in the movie. And that was a bit of a disappointment, because I'm sitting there an hour into the film thinking, when is the war going to start? Because you look at Dawn for the Planet of the Apes, you're thinking, whoa, war is about to start. Caesar just put an end to it, and then you read the opening lines of this film, and you think, okay, humans are hunting these apes. This entire film is going to be a war movie. And unfortunately, you don't get that. You get only about 20 minutes of it towards the end of the film, and that's where it kind of is a bit disappointing. Still a really well-made film, beautiful looking film. Motion capture work is good. They took some risks. I think they paid off pretty well. For a third movie in a franchise, I think it does a pretty good job, because there's been a lot of movies where by the time they reach the third film, it is absolutely garbage. And this manages to be actually pretty solid. I think it's better than Rise of the Planet of the Apes, but just not enough to beat Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. And for that reason, I'm going to be giving War for the Planet of the Apes a B. Solid film, nice way to end off the series. We're probably going to get more Planet of the Apes films, just not with Matt Reeves. I think at this point, looking at box office numbers and everything, no one really has a huge interest for Planet of the Apes films anymore. I think they need to take a break. Maybe wait maybe a decade to do something else with it. But right now, even myself being a pretty big Planet of the Apes fan, I don't want to see any more Planet of the Apes films after this film. I was really excited going in to see this film, and after I saw it, I was like, I'm tired. I don't want to watch any more of this. Still, the original, I think, the 1968 one is the best one made, and a lot of people really who haven't seen it don't want to see it, and it's a shame because it's still the best one that's out there, and people say, well, the effects aren't good, and that's the big issue. It's not about effect, it's about a good story and good characters, and I think despite the fact that it's a really old film from like, what, 68? It's 2017. That's what people were like, kind of draws people away that it's such an old movie. But it's not about the effects, it's about a good story and good characters, and I think once you have those two elements locked into a movie, the movie isn't going to age because its main focus is not effects. So, because I know someone who's like, oh, this movie looks visually amazing, that's why this movie is so good. No, because give it 10, 15 years, effects might not hold up. Take like Star Wars, for instance. They're not going to hold up, and that's why I want good characters and a good story. For the Planet of the Apes series, I think they definitely needed to modernize the franchise and not just copy and paste stuff from the original. They needed to be creative, and they did it with this series. I kind of wish that all three films were kind of bridged together a little bit more, because none of the human characters were carried over from one film to the next, and I just always kept wondering, where's James Franco's character? What is he doing at this point? Same thing with Jason Clarke's character. I wish that some of those human characters were kind of, something was given to us. Like, where are they now? Because it kind of makes it a little bit pointless for those other two films. Like, they were introduced, and now where are they? Okay? And this film doesn't answer that. So it feels like they didn't conclude the entire series. They concluded the Caesar story, which was this entire trilogy, but I guess I wanted to know what happened to the other characters. Because we see, they do make some references to James Franco in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. They have like a picture of him and a video that Caesar's watching of him when he was growing up. So I wish they would answer some of those questions, or we would see those characters come back, if it's even a small like cameo, just to kind of wrap it up. I understand that humans were never really a huge part of this entire series, but I wanted to see them kind of given the finale that the apes were. That is my review of War for the Planet of the Apes. If anyone has any thoughts, opinions on this movie, who have seen it, please comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you like this video, do give it a like down there on the bottom, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And I'll see you guys next time for more unboxings, reviews, and movie news.